Hello ladies and gentlemen, Willie here. New World's December patch has hit the PTR and we have something which will be replacing the high watermark system. Very glad to hear that's gone. I can't believe it's happening this early, but here we are. So what's new? Expertise and Gypsum. Expertise will be replacing high watermark on gear after the patch has gone live and will be affecting your gear score as of 2022, and it will also show the level of items you have equipped on your gear as well. Revolutionary. Gypsum is a new resource from all kinds of endgame activities, your bosses, expeditions, arenas, outpost rush, and so on. You grind X amount per day to make a Gypsum orb. This then goes on a 22-hour cooldown per type of orb made, depending on which activity you got it from. The orb can then be turned into a cast for any piece of worn equipment, which after it is made also goes on an 18-hour cooldown. There are 7 activities total that award resources towards an orb, so at best you can upgrade 7 different gear slots every 18 hours. Now, first and foremost, I think that this is objectively just a better system than the high watermark was, and addresses issues I had in a previous video where the endgame had a lack of variety because chest runs were by far and away the most efficient way to level up your high watermark. Now you can be able to do pretty much anything at endgame and have access to increase your expertise levels. This is a big win. And the reason why this is better is because players will always do what is most efficient. This is how people are nowadays. Pinning it on players to not play in ways which aren't fun just doesn't make sense. If the best way to play your game isn't fun, guess what? Your game isn't fun. Players will game the system. The devs have to stop this from happening. It's a back and forth. That's just the way it is with games these days. Look at all the poor guys running down PvE, Alterac Valley and Season and Mastery at the moment. It's the best honor you can get. Doesn't mean it's fun, but hey, those rank 12 to 14 perps mean you skip the majority of any gearing that isn't PvE for the majority of classes. And if Expertise and Gypsum were in from day one, I think the game would be looking in a much better state overall as well. The patch also contains some very nice changes, such as expedition bosses will always have a bump in Expertise, all the chests in Lazarus and Garden of Genesis will have a chance to provide Expertise bumps, Timeless Shards, which are an item to add a second perk to any piece of armor. All in all, we have more ways to get upgrades from a greater number of sources, as well as being able to better determine upgrades on our weapons and having more reasons than ever to run expeditions. And initially I did this video prior to several announcements which we just had coming out about the feedback since this system was planned to go live, because the original system had some pretty big and clear issues, such as before the update the high watermark was going to scale to your expertise after the patch had gone live. So if you had not been grinding daily chests once the patch had hit, your progress was going to be reset pretty heavily. Now the effects of this would have generally been short term, but how many people will stick around after their progress has been reset is not something I'd want to hedge my bets on, because if you like gathering and crafting and the thought of running Merc and Reekwater each day made you want to log out, well, you literally picked the wrong progression path before this update. Crafted items would have not counted towards expertise, so say you made a 600 bow, that would be put all the way back down to what your expertise level was. Sure, you still would have had the perks and that's the benefit of crafting, but losing 50 gears to overnight would have just felt terrible. Moreover, the gypsum from crafting and gathering only happens post 200, and well, if you craft things, you know that getting a level in armor smithing is not quite the same as getting a level in skinning. So if you wish to remain a crafter as a primary way to gear out your character, you couldn't before the update. To be honest, you can only create 1 orb per 18 hours, and that's going to raise the expertise of one of your gear slots. All in all, if you remained solely as a crafter, you would have had to spend literally months to get back to where you are now, unless your watermark is already quite high. And of course your jewelry expertise will be 500 as well, though they did say they were going to do something to speed this up a little bit. Now following the feedback, the progression of, well, everybody is being updated, and concerns with the direction of the patch, for me at least, have been somewhat alleviated. In early 2022, when we start reducing the effectiveness of your gear to your expertise level, we will exempt the following items: any item you craft, any item you earn from a quest, and any item you purchase from a faction shop. So when you make an item, instead of it being set to your expertise, it's auto set to whatever item level you have made, meaning crafting as a progression path has been saved. In fact, compared to the gypsum farming, it looks pretty OP. Not only do you get to decide 2 perks with the new update, but you're already in a state where you can craft some very good 580 items instantly as per the Orichalcum template as soon as they come out, unless they need a new item, that is. One of the issues with this new system, if you have a dedicated crafter in your friend group or guild whom you've been funneling items and patterns to, well, well, they're not going to be able to make things for you anymore, because unless you've made that item yourself, it will set back to your expertise levels. There is also some respite for this, as well as people buying items on the trading post from crafters or chest farmers, and to be honest, I think previous hitting level cap, going straight to the trading post, throwing a few thousand gold to get 580 gear instantly was a completely backwards progression path. Players were going from average level quest gear to items that endgame players have been farming for a very long time, and it devalued the journey of gradually gearing up your character and gaining power, and it also took a lot of content out of the game for the end level player. Now instead there is a meet you halfway system with expertise instead, whereby they say when we implement the gear score scaling, we will now only reduce the effectiveness to the middle of your expertise and the item's gear score. So if your musket expertise is 520 and you buy a 600 gear score musket off the market, your effective gear score will be 560. This combined with getting to use all the perks should create good value in the marketplace for future users. So it's still necessary to grind 600 to get the max effectiveness from your weapon, but you won't be hitting like a wet noodle. And this should also be a good change for when new weapons come into the marketplace as well. Furthermore, Amazon have clarified the expected amount of expertise bumps from 500 to 600, that being 35, which I understand for each bump, as they call it, or cast, to be worth slightly under 3 expertise. So a little over a month of grind to go from a 500 gear score to getting each particular item up to a gear score of 600 where it's at its maximum power. So the update we're going to get is going to salvage progression paths, which aren't just go and kill stuff every day, and it's definitely better than high watermark for me, but at the same time it's just not very exciting, is it? You get that amazing 600 gear score RNG drop from an outpost rush or an expedition, and you realize you have 565 expertise and it's going to take you about a week and a half before it's actually 600. I know people are going to say it's gamers wanting things instantly, instant gratification, and yes, it's not that long, but it's just so arbitrary. Imagine if weapon skill in classic World of Warcraft was on a daily cooldown. You get that big two-hander and it's not at its maximum power for a week and a half, and you can only get 3 weapon skill a day. It just feels like a time gate before I actually get to use the thing properly. And yes, New World was already very daily heavy for progression, but now all aspects of progress, bar crafting funnily enough, have become an enormous daily grind. And if you are actively playing, a lot of the takeaways from these patch notes that I've read would be get to 200 crafting in as many skills as you can, because if you're not and you're doing a variety of activities every day, each orb and cast are on 18-hour cooldowns. I've never seen a game tie its progression to daily content this hard in my life, and people don't always have consistent amount of free time either, even if you lower the daily from 22 hours to 18 hours, which they just did. And I know Amazon have expressed they want a global cooldown for everything as well, where I'm assuming everything will reset at a certain time, but if you fail to miss a day, you'll feel like you're falling behind, because well, you are. If you take the cooldown on the orbs and casts and have them reset once per week and allow people to craft up to the maximum value per week that they would have been able to do were the system daily, at least people can have a sesh with the boys on the weekend and bang out 3 or 4 days worth of crafts, rather than having a busy week, missing a number of days and getting that sinking feeling of being left behind. This is what Blizzard did with artifact power back in early Legion. Heavy incentivized to grind it from all available sources daily, actively falling behind in power level relative to peers if you did not do the grind. Only difference was artifact power was uncapped, so people went crazy grinding dozens of more of souls daily. I actually agree with some kind of cap on this, but just not to the extent that it's being done. How fun will the system feel when we get our new weapons post its implementation, the daggers, two-handed sword, blunderbuss, starting at 500 and basically having a guaranteed 1 month daily grind before you're actually using a 600 gear score item. Overall, I don't hate the system. I at least like it more than the high watermark, but it ties the entire endgame into a daily loop of do XYZ activity. This, in my mind, is solely a change which is aimed at improving player retention, making sure that people have more reasons than ever to log in daily, even more than high watermark did. The crafters' time investment so far may have been saved, but as for the rest, having so much emphasis on daily content doesn't overly improve my expectations. It feels entirely antithetical to any semblance of a sandbox New World could have taken on, if it indeed has much of that anymore. It's just, well, not very exciting to have your progression this heavily time gated. Maybe that's what people remaining with New World are happy with though, and perhaps this will be the turning point where the game begins to stabilize somewhat, but the history of major content patches and just 1 or 2 things going wrong so far has not been too great. In any event, let me know your thoughts on the changes and the update they just recently did. Hopefully it's a positive step for you. As always, thank you so much for watching and listening in, and I shall see you on the next one very soon.